If somebody told me back in January that the only thing that was going to save this year from being one of the absolute worst when it comes to mainstream horror would be an Eli Roth slasher movie based on a fake trailer he did for Grindhouse 16 years ago, then I probably would have called you a liar. Needless to say, I've never been more happy to be this pleasantly surprised. Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
Before I get started, I'd like to kindly ask that you hit the like button, and please subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.
What are you waiting for, huh? What are you waiting for?
An axe-wielding maniac terrorizes residents of Plymouth, Massachusetts after a horrific tragedy 1 year earlier. Picking off victims one by one, these seemingly random revenge killings soon become a part of a larger sinister plan. I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on the channel, but Grindhouse back in 2007 is easily one of my all-time most memorable movie theater experiences. Everything about that experience was just so unique to me. Everything from the visual presentation, to the fact that you were getting two movies for the price of one, to the fake trailers in between, and yes, there was even an intermission. Not having grown up on Grindhouse cinema like some people did, all of this was kind of a foreign concept for me at the time, and it ended up capturing my imagination more so than I expected. Unfortunately, the whole concept was kind of underappreciated by the mainstream audiences, so all we really got coming out of it were some machete films that didn't really work for me as well as Death Proof and Planet Terror did. Fast forward to 2023, and Eli Roth is making a full-length feature based on his fake trailer from that film.
Jesus Christ, it's about time!
I wonder when we're going to get Rob Zombie's Werewolf Women of the SS film. I'd be lying to you if I said that I didn't go into this film being a little bit disappointed that it clearly wasn't going to have that Grindhouse presentation. Gone are the intentional imperfections and graininess of the film. Just two of the things that made that original experience so memorable for me personally. But much to my surprise, the further and further I got into Thanksgiving, the less I cared about that.
No way!
In a weird sort of way, Thanksgiving feels like a modern remake of a Grindhouse film that we never actually got to see. Which actually sounds terrible in theory, but let me explain. The amazing thing about this movie is that yes, the visual presentation is a bit more modern, but it also somehow still manages to capture the essence of Grindhouse cinema. It still has these kind of over-the-top moments, especially when it comes to the kills, that somehow find that balance between still being entertaining and not going too far. Violence in a slasher movie, to me, especially a slasher movie like this, should be gruesome and uncomfortable, of course, but not to the point where it stops being entertaining.
That makes sense.
And this is an issue that I've actually had with Eli Roth as a director for a long time now. When looking at his entire filmography, yes, I've liked a couple of his films, but more often than not, he did this uber-violent torture, gore, shock value cinema that just doesn't really work for me. And Thanksgiving, to me, believe it or not, shows me that he's kind of grown as a horror director, because I believe that he realized he doesn't have to go completely overboard all the time with the violence in order for it to be effective. To me, the violence in Thanksgiving is right in that sweet spot. It's exactly where you want it to be in a slasher film.
I like it a lot.
So kudos goes to Eli, I guess, for showing a little bit of restraint, not going too far, and still keeping things entertaining. And I'm not taking anything away from the violence, because make no mistake about it, these kills are still brutal, and without a doubt some of the most unique kills that I've seen in a slasher film in a long time. My favorite kill, without a doubt, involves a trampoline, and if anyone's seen the original fake Grindhouse trailer for Thanksgiving, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Going into this movie, you're expecting the obvious homages to the holiday-themed slashers of the past. Like Halloween, for instance. And don't get me wrong, you very obviously and definitely see those influences. But much to my surprise, Thanksgiving feels like it takes inspiration from Scream more than anything.
I'm feeling woozy here.
In fact, I would go as far to say that tonally, this is actually a better Scream film than the Scream film that came out earlier this year. Which is not really hard to do considering Scream 6 is easily one of the most agonizing movie theater experiences of my life. Mostly because the radio silence team behind that film doesn't really understand what makes Scream great. And Eli Roth apparently has a much better understanding of that. It actually kind of got me thinking what an Eli Roth Scream movie might look like. If nothing else, I think he would be respectful to what came before and capture the essence of Scream much better. I would even go as far as to say that Wes Craven's influence can be heavily felt in Thanksgiving. And I do think that Wes Craven would actually be proud of what Eli Roth accomplished here. Thanksgiving manages to find that balance that a film like this needs between being a whodunit, darkly humorous, and brutal when necessary. I was most impressed by the whole whodunit aspect of this film because they don't reveal too much throughout the movie that gives the reveal away. Up until about a minute before the reveal happens, I was still guessing as to who could be responsible for all these killings. They just hit it very well, and even when the reveal happens, it feels like it makes sense, and it doesn't feel like it necessarily comes out of left field like some other whodunit slashers. And it makes me wonder that if you watch this film more, will there be little hints sprinkled throughout that we all might have missed while watching it for the first time? Yes, this film is also darkly humorous. Something that modern films don't really know how to pull off anymore. They usually just take the easy way out and make the characters very mean-spirited and overly vulgar, to the point that as an audience member you hate everyone and don't really care whether or not they live or die.
If he dies, he dies.
The dark humor in Thanksgiving comes off much more natural and like they aren't trying too hard to incite a reaction. And I think that's important for a film like this because when your humor devolves into cringe, it typically derails the whole movie, and luckily that didn't happen here. And yes, of course, this movie is brutal, but only when necessary. The gore is very much there, the over-the-top violence is there, but again, it's executed to feel more like your classic slashers used to feel. One thing that I wasn't expecting was for this film's opening sequence to play out in the way that it does. It kind of catches you off guard because you aren't really sure where it's going or how it ties into the bigger story. But as you see things quickly turn to chaos, to me it was very reminiscent of that iconic opening sequence from Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead remake. It's not exactly the same, I just mean it's similar in that it's a wild sequence that sets the tone for the entire film.
Because it's all part of the plan.
Also, I'm going to say it right now, the killer in this film, everything from his design, to the kills, to the motive, it all worked for me. So much so that I'm willing to suggest already that we might have an instant new horror icon on our hands. Some of the characters in this film, and even the final girl, or the main character, do feel a bit cliche at times, but in a weird sort of way it works for a film like this because characters like that were the foundation that the slasher genre was built on.
Makes perfect sense.
Bottom line, Thanksgiving was one hell of a pleasant surprise that I'm not going to say was perfect, but to me it is easily the most entertaining mainstream horror movie to come out all year. I can honestly say that I was locked in from start to finish. It's everything you want a slasher movie to be and more. To me, it's movies like this that make the theater experience a bit more enjoyable. There's absolutely nothing like going to see a new horror film and not really knowing what that film has in store for you. And that's why I'm going to give Thanksgiving the pleased Palpatine.
Good. Good.
Y'all be cool. Right on.